everyone. Welcome to another episode of the Chichester Chats. I just know he cracks up every time I say that.
I do.
Of course, it's me, Phil. There's Lilith, and of course, the man who we couldn't do the Chichester Chats without Mr. DG Chichester. Hello, sir.
Hello, Phil. Hello, Lilith. I think maybe we should try, a version without me, just to see how it goes. It might be an improvement. We could invite Alan. No, it's always good to be back with you guys. Thank you. It's a real privilege to do this with you every month.
Yes, this month we picked Elektra, Root of Evil from 1995.
The 90s.
The 90s. They have their own little slice of whatever personality, character, something. So obviously something good came out of it because we keep talking about it. So, here we are.
So 95. So this was like probably towards the end of your run at Marvel.
Yeah, I mean, because I had taken the break from a few issues of Daredevil to prep for this because we really wanted to dive in, and I knew there was going to be a lot of research and sort of more intensive writing in the way that we wanted to structure this 4-issue miniseries. So that was all my focus. And then as I kind of came back around to Daredevil, then that's when all the shift happened in the editorial offices and then the big shakeup of the kind of crash in the mid 90s, which was 96, 97. So that was a real effect on a lot of stuff and a lot of people.
I was about to make the joke, be like, "Oh, you took a break from Daredevil. Is that when that Alan Smithy guy took over?"
No, he came a little later.
Okay.
Alan was. Yeah. I've made my peace with Alan, so he's.
So was this your idea, or did Marvel say, "Hey, we want a Elektra, something after Fall from Grace"? Or
no, this was. I'll take credit. I think the nice thing about doing these podcasts with you guys, and is I've gotten a much better sense of myself, so I'll take more credit than I used to. This was part of the whole, I'll say, Daredevil universe machinery that we were trying to crank up. That really started with Fall from Grace and the attention that was happening on the book, and we felt like we had re-seized some of the spotlight away from the spiders and the mutants, and we had the PR department paying attention to us, and sales were either very good or pretty good. Definitely Daredevil was getting more attention than where Marvel typically went with him, which at that point in time was very much, if Frank Miller wasn't writing it, they didn't really pay a lot of attention to it. And obviously when Frank Miller wrote it, it was worth paying attention to. But our point was, this is a core character of yours. Pay attention to him all the time. And so once we sort of had that momentum going, we had begun to proposition a lot of different things. I mentioned some of those before. We had this time travel story. We had this Daredevil Year 2 story. We had this idea that we were going to create almost a cover corner box, sort of thing. So you'd always know these were Daredevil titles, right? No matter who was doing it. It wasn't just going to be, me. We were trying to really extend out the run of the character so he'd have more prominence. He wouldn't quite be a Spider-Man universe, but he'd have these other things going on, and Elektra was going to be an important part of that. She would have her own kind of series of mini-series, and because we had done all this work, quote unquote, bringing her back into the fold. Okay, now what do you do with her? Do you just let her be a supporting character in the book, or do you give her a chance to sort of play out some of her own character? So the proposition that we move very rapidly into a series of her own was something that I put forward, was quickly received well, and then it was kind of off to the races. Okay, now what do you do with it?
That was going to be my next question, because there was an ongoing series. So originally, were you going to be writing that then?
Yeah, I'm sure I would have. I'm sure I would have beaten somebody out of the way with with a pool noodle or a harder object, and said that, I'm the guy. I mean, I'll go to the insecurity and arrogance mix that I was probably in that point in time of I was the guy, right? I was the Daredevil guy. I had, with Scott, obviously, brought Elektra back into the fold. We had a vision. So, that we had not proposed an ongoing series though at that time. I mean, we saw Elektra as very, precious is probably not a good word to use with her, but, unique. And so, in our mind, a series of miniseries, made, or limited series or whatever, made more sense than an ongoing book. An ongoing book is it's hellaciously hard, right? Not just in terms of the schedule, which is manageable, but it's that, it's the continuity that never ends. And so no matter how big an event you set up, all right, you do Fall of the Kingpin or something like that, and it's like, oh, in the next issue, where do you go? Like, your stakes are always having to rise within the course of never having a chance to really reset, and so that's why I think there's something more, approachable from a creative point of view. And I think even from a reader point of view, where limited series can set you up. So we saw her as constantly being in the spotlight, but being in the spotlight with limited series that could play out her adventures now, her adventures, of the past, right? There's so much of what happened with her, that we don't know about, that there was always a chance that this could be a 2-issue thing, this could be a 4-issue thing. So we never propositioned an ongoing series, so much as thinking it that way. And this was obviously the first salvo in that, without the character of Salvo. So anyway.
So basically the 90s Venom formula, give her a series of miniseries. And I mean, it seems like Marvel does that a lot now. It's like every time, almost when they get new creators, they almost start a new number one. Seems like almost with most of their
series. I think the number ones are, and I'm sure you guys agree to, an extent. I mean, they're gimmicks, right? I mean, they're clearly, it's
a hopping on point.
It's a hopping on point. And I think it loses something too. I mean, it's
when you do one once a year. Yeah.
Right. On the one hand, it's sort of, cause we would have these conversations, editorially, all the time when I was working as an editor of where the balance is of does a new reader want to come in at 600? Do they feel like they're losing out? Do I need to read 100 to 1 to 599 to understand it? But I think there's also something about feeling like you're part of a longer legacy when you get in on that. And the easy way to do it is I think Jim Shooter took a lot of crap for a lot of the things that he did. But I think one of the things he was always key about was you bring the reader in. And you either bring the reader in within the story, or you have one of those recap pages, on the inside cover or something, just so you know, where are we at? And if you're telling a good story, artistically, writing-wise, you're going to balance out those things within the course of it. I think you guys had, said, I should go read the current run. So I started reading some of Chip Zdarsky's, work, and feeling very jealous about it. But but I think he's doing, the couple volumes I read so far, it's a masterful job of weaving in what's going forward and also who this guy is, right? So it's completely doable, but everybody doesn't choose to do it. Are you hearing too much noise out there? Is that you picking up on any of this?
I hear a little bit. I hear a little bit, but no, we can hear you fine though.
Okay, good.
Yeah. Oh, I'm sure you're very jealous of Chip. He's using Daredevil and Elektra at the moment.
Yeah. It's really cool. No, but I mean, perfectly like, some stuff you read and you're like, man, that dude should not be writing this book at all. This is not a case of that. Clearly, it's nice. It's a good jealousy.
So you read some of it. Have you seen what he's doing with Elektra right now?
I've seen the covers, and I got the collections that I've read. It's only the first 2, I think. Okay. And so it just gets to that turning point where Matt is a wreck again. And she shows up and says, you can't even stand, let alone, defend this neighborhood. So I'm here to help you. So that looks like there's a lot of fun and unique things, going on there.
But back to the root of evil.
Back to the root of it.
Sorry, I don't want to take it away to talk about everybody else. But it's So was one of your main mission points, or like I wanted like delve deeper into Elektra's like origins? Because I mean, we kind of got a little bit with Frank Miller, just with when her father gets killed and how she meets Matt, but we never got anything like before that. I don't think so.
Yeah, I mean, it was one of those weird books in writing it that and there's been a few times where this has happened. There was some Clive Barker, work, and this one, I think especially, where it just felt like the creative flow was just there, and it was just very organic, and it was based as much, I think, on absorbing so much material over the course of figuring out who Elektra was, even in bringing her back, right? Obviously, I'd read all of Frank Miller's work, the Marvel Universe Handbook entries, a ton of books on ninjas and ninjutsu, and this is pre-Google, so I actually had to buy books and read them, and
horror.
The horror. Oh my God. Or in some cases, borrow them from Carl Potts and be very, very careful. I did nothing wrong with them, because Carl would have done some ninjutsu on me probably. But, and so, there was all these bits and pieces almost came to the fore of the flow of the story. So, the elements of the backstory were obviously drawn both from what Frank Miller had set up, but also the Greek myth of Elektra, and then bringing in the sense of a brother, or what's the whole balance of a modern day sense of the father feeling wronged by the mother, and how he would feel, so the higher level of that element in the story. But it flowed out very naturally, and I would say, I'm going to get pretentious here, artistically, in the sense of even the structure of it, right? The structure that Scott and I discussed, in having those moments that went between the vignettes of her past, right, as a child, or with the snake root, and the current story, driving, was something different, for the way I had done things before. But it felt just very natural, and it also aligned with where Scott wanted to do certain artistic elements of his own, with those framing moments or the break moments, where we'd have the pin-up like shot of her, the standalone shot, and the quotes and that sort of thing. So, but it wasn't, it just flowed. It just really flowed really well. I would hold it up as one of those things that, with maybe one exception, it was kind of like, in my mind's eye, I want this book to be this thing. And this book became this thing, as opposed to last time when we talked about Batman Daredevil, and I said, hey, it's pretty good, but I nitpicked it to shit. This felt like, wow, all these things came together, right? Mm-hmm. In this right balance of what fueled her from her past, what she's trying to deal with now that she's back, and what does it mean for her, and how does she stand alone, and is she really ninja, and how much does that, matter to her, and as part of her character. So I was pleased with how all that synced up.
Yeah, I don't know about you, Lilith, but I mean, this is like the first time I really felt I like really got Elektra, like I really understood her.
Yeah, she definitely needed a lot of fleshing out, and that does this perfectly.
Yeah, well, thank you. And I think Elektra Assassin fleshes her out as well, but in a completely insane way, right?
This is more relatable, as it were.
Yeah, there's nothing. I mean, Elektra Assassin is pure golden crystal meth mixed with LSD, mixed with I don't know, some pharmacological thing that's not invented yet.
So you meant Florida water. Okay.
Exactly. It's got a little crock mixed in there, it's a smoothie. It's a Florida smoothie. But it's brilliant, right? But she's not you're right. She's not a relatable character there. She's insane. She's mad. She's completely, you can't look away. You can't look away from the story in the pages, but but I certainly drew from that as well. But it was my intention to make her more relatable because we had longer term plans for her, and the longer term plans can't be based around, this badass character arrives for 15 pages and then they're gone again. You have got to have relatable moments, in my mind, to work somebody out.
How did you end on 4 issues?
I think that was probably a combination of, what are the page count on those? 48, I think. A sense of budget, right? Because the more pages you do, the more issues you do, the more the company's got to commit to it. And 4 issues felt like it was a quote unquote typical thing for a limited series, and also gave us that little extra bump and breathing room beyond the typical trilogy of 3. So it was like everything else I was describing, partly organic and partly planned. If we had said we wanted to do a 10-issue series, we would have had probably a harder time selling it through. 4 fit right in the mold of so much of what was going on that the sales department, which has to approve these things right as you go along, would have said, yeah, okay, that makes sense.
In movies, it suits. In comics, it sells.
Well, yeah. I mean, it's a business.
And I think
that's something people always sometimes forget.
And I think I think that was like a standard back then. I think a lot of the Marvel miniseries back then were like 4 issues.
Yeah.
So.
That's what I'm saying. Yeah. It was like, it was easy to go in and say, it's a 4-issue limited series. And that was almost like okay. Whereas we went in and said it was a 6-issue or a 2-issue, 2-issue maybe not, but anything beyond 4 would have had more discussion probably. And Elektra was well known. Fall from Grace had been well received. It allowed Marvel to immediately, put a stake in the ground that Elektra's back, so it definitely, hit all the right elements. Although I don't think they did any or certainly a decent job promoting it, in retrospect, but, certainly having her back was a good thing.
So,
and do you think the promotion was, because it's a female character, Marvel, especially in the 90s, it's more big guns, big pouches.
Yeah, but nobody gets more, big body count than Elektra, right? When she's off and away. So you would think, but you're right, Lilith. Maybe that was it.
Definitely
as much
more
as
competent than Frank Castle is all I got to say on the revenge aspect of it all.
Every month, more competent than Frank Castle. But no, I just think, and again, 95, there's probably just so many books out, right? Is that like right at the height of Marvel, right before the crash? Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's everything, but it was always the argument with promotion of, you're promoting and I guess it's like it's job security to an extent. We're promoting the things that are already selling. You're promoting all the Spider-Man and X-Men books. Wow. Look, Spider-Man and X-Men books are selling. Maybe they're going to sell anyway, and maybe you take 20% of your budget and promote, this other stuff that needs a little bit of an extra boost or, figures out other attention around it. But I'm nitpicking at people's jobs who I wasn't embedded with, and that's unfair, right? I don't know all the ins and outs. I know some of the ins and outs, but certainly that was also part of, like the strategic thing that we were doing when I'm talking about that Daredevil universe and the miniseries and the other Elektra series that would have come after this one, was if we create enough events happening, right, they have to pay attention to us.
Yeah.
So that was strategically coming out of Ralph's office and all of us working together to try to really drive it. And that was why, this felt to us like an event, even if ultimately maybe it didn't get promoted as an event. Although all the elements are there, the design, the format, everything around it is pretty premium, I thought.
I mean, again, I don't think I remember hearing about this back in the day when it came out. If I had been reading Daredevil and I had seen like a page ad for, hey, spinning out a Fall from Grace, by Chichester and McDaniel, I would have been like, oh yeah, I got to get this. I really got to, I got to pick this up.
Right, and we were even doing that within the pages of the comic, right? That part of my taking the time off. We were also doing these little mini run-ups rather, within the pages of the comic, right? There was an interview I did with Hector Collazo, right? The inker. There were little preview stories that we did. There were like behind the scenes stories that we did. So we were trying to kind of create this runway to the book itself, thinking that was going to get picked up more by the internal machinery than it ultimately did. So in some ways, I think it suffered from lack of attention, but not from lack of execution.
Oh yeah. Lilith, I feel like I'm hogging the conversation.
No,
again.
you're doing good. I got my Frank Castle. I got my Frank Castle equipment. I'm good.
Okay. I know what I was going to ask you. So I know you said you had been thinking about a while bringing Elektra back before you actually pulled the trigger and Fall from Grace. So was this story like percolating in your mind for like that long, or did you not give it any? No. Not until Fall from Grace, and you're like, okay, I got to do more with her now.
Any of that pre-discussion around Elektra was sort of, floated out as kind of, hey, we got elements of Daredevil's universe. Should we use them, not use them? But as I think I said in the past, Elektra was hands off, right? Elektra was in a vault, sealed in carbonite. In an alternate universe, you do not touch her. Every now and again, she'd come into conversation semi-naturally, partly from hey, what kind of sales attention would we get if we brought Elektra back? But Ralph, who was the gentleman of gentlemen, was always, let's not think about that. And we'd move on. So, and again, it was Ralph who ultimately was the one who said, as we were throwing everything at the wall with Fall from Grace, he's the one who's like, is there a place for Elektra in this story? So he takes the credit and the blame, for then instigating that thinking. So there was no story in mind except for the fact that I had Elektra on my brain because I was the assistant editor on Elektra Assassin, right? That was one of my entree points to editorial work was, here's a regular comic book that you're helping to edit, and here's complete madness, that is going to change the industry for the better and piss off a lot of evangelicals and other crazy people, at the same time. And, suddenly I'm meeting Bill Sienkiewicz, and Bill Sienkiewicz is one stop short of driving the pages into the office because they were so elaborate, right? These things were gigantic and, filled with multimedia elements. And then I was the editor on the collected edition. So, but that wasn't, Phil, I've got to do this character or I've got these things. It's just like I had a lot of stuff in my head that was naturally percolating for many years. So when I got to the point of, okay, now I get to tell a story with the character, certainly those things had been gestating for a while. Mm-hmm. So maybe they then said, all right, now do something with us. But then it was also those elements of research that I was really good at, but I also had this tendency to over research things and then try to plug a lot of stuff into a story, right? Mm-hmm. It's like, and then I did all this research. I got to cram all this crap in here. Sometimes that works, sometimes it doesn't. Sometimes it's a really cool bit, like the whole thing with Fall from Grace and the about face virus. Okay, the CIA really did do tests in the New York City subways in the 60s where they sent viral or gaseous elements through the subways to see how they traveled. So that was an instigator for that thinking here. But all of the elements about Elektra were based upon my research into mythology for who is Elektra as a mythological character. What are the ninjutsu as a culture and their myths and their stories and their legends? What are their fighting styles, right? Every member of the Snake Root is based upon a different either a fighting style or a tactical weapon, from the ninjutsu itself. So, but I think the balancing act there was I did all the research, but then I was able to edit myself, or Ralph edited me, or Scott told me, no, I'm not drawing that, or whatever it was.
I was just going to ask you that.
No, Scott was always brilliant. But it's I think it's very well maintained as the balance between there's a lot of detail, but it doesn't go into some rabbit hole of what are you writing? I don't even know how to follow the story anymore.
No, but you could tell you were trying to rev up for an ongoing series. I mean, just all this stuff with Stick. I mean, you just kind of teased us with an origin of Stick, which you
a lot of feathers in my cap for sure.
Yeah. Even Elektra's connection to the snake root, that's surprising.
Yeah. I mean, that was, thank you. I mean, yeah, that was definitely all like richness that would have then been hopefully mined out.
So can you tease us with, I mean, besides that, what you would have done else in the ongoing?
You know, I it's been obviously a couple of years, but
we're all old here. It's okay.
I think I did my typical ridiculousness of like setting up all these very, very powerful characters for her, her team. The snake root, got, I think, richer and more detailed. And then I kill off a lot of people. I then go through them, to take them down after you set them up. But I'm sure I would have brought back the snake root and had more of that relationship, even Takagi, in the sense of the relationship, with her. I'm sure I would have gone back to the brother and brought him, into it, to have him there as that little background element in her past stories and helping to save her. And that I'm sure was in my mind that was going to come, back around. Even her evil twin, the Aranus character from, Fall from Grace, I'm sure would have come back around. I don't know that I would have played that much more with Garrett, even though I was, to an extent. He was just fun, fodder to play out. But I think in that series of limited series, it would have been probably very ninja oriented stories. I think there was just a richness to that world. There is a richness to that world, and her investment and training would have invariably brought out, stories where either we delved into that more, or we found places where you could contrast the ninja aspects against things that, where she was the odd fish, out, as it were.
And I mean, we talked about it before, I think, before we even made this a formal thing, but Fall from Grace, I mean, just a masterpiece. There's just so many moving parts, and some other writers easily that could like degenerate into like a mess, and I'm just like, how is this a coherent thing? He has so many moving parts, so many characters in this thing, and it still works perfectly.
Thank you. I mean, there were moments where I thought it was getting away, and I think there's probably people who would counter you and say it did get away, but there was but I think the balance of it worked out pretty well. There was some guy on Twitter, I wish I had it like flag, but he had like a great like 2-word review of it, and it was like something like contained lunacy or something like that, which was like, okay, I'll buy that one. I would if I had the chance, I'd put that as a cover blurb somewhere. So
no, I know it was perfection, because like back in the day when I was reading it, teenage me, if it degenerated into chaos, I would have been bored. I'd been like, no, I'm not finishing this. No, I was hooked the whole time. So I know it.
That's great. Cause I think this is the beauty of like meeting you guys and other folks like you, the reaction then, obviously all we really had to gauge on was, for the most part, was sales, right?
Yeah.
You get letters, which maybe you get, maybe you don't, and sales. And then because conventions were few and far between, so maybe you'd meet people there. So what's your gauge of, do people like stuff or not like stuff? So it was a very different sense of impression of what people really thought. So now, to get this sort of feedback now is an important thing. It makes me want to get up in the morning.
I mean, that's true. You didn't have the internet for the most part.
No.
So like how many letters like would like say like a Daredevil or something get a month?
Probably. It would depend on the flow. A book like Daredevil, which had a regular letter column, would probably get, I don't know, I want to say 50 and up, seems like about right. Maybe, certainly a bigger selling title like X-Men probably got hundreds, of letters.
And you multiply that by like 1,000 or whatever, because that one super fan that's going to write the letter, multiplied by whatever. That's, I think.
Yeah, and that's the thing, and who takes the time to do it? And then limited series really didn't get letters for the most part because it was a limited series and it didn't have a letter column unless it was an extended one. Like we added a letter column to Elektra Assassin back in the day, because it started to get some letters, and we said, okay, this is going to go on for 8-10 issues, whatever it was. And we figured, okay, we'll have enough to print a few. And we did. And I think a couple of those there was a classic one of these people should be locked up. And the woman was quite serious. She wasn't saying it like tongue in cheek. She was like, there was one that was, I know Bill, always loved it. Like, the children should be protected from this, that kind of thing. So it was, they probably shouldn't.
Was there an issue that flowed like water that was easier to write than others when it comes to
Root of Evil
series? Mm-hmm.
No, the whole thing, Lilith, was like water. I mean, that's a great description. It really flowed in my mind and my remembrance so naturally. Once there was no point at which I hit a wall. A little bit toward the end, the showdown, scene, and trying to get them to the right place at the right time. But so many of the elements I had bookmarked or organized, and early on I had come across that whole ninja bit of, the total subterfuge and sacrifice of soak your armor in poison, so that your enemy will be poisoned just by attacking you. That I knew early on was going to be the final, like, comeuppance between her and Takagi. So it just really kind of, snapped together. I mean, the only thing I feel is kind of off about it, and it's my own fault, as it were, is the ending comes like super quick. Like everything is paced, I think, pretty well. And then that last moment where she's at the grave of her father, is like a page. And so it needed probably 2 or 3 pages to breathe a little bit. And if I had to do it all over again, I'd somehow go back, but it was a denouement in the pretentious, writing structure of things, but it needed just a little bit of breathing. But the whole flow was just like, wow, this is working. And I think that structure that Scott and I had agreed upon helped that, right? The beats of the before stories, vignettes, and the current story, and then the vignette, as it were, just gave it a different creative sequence, which helped move things along, because you could write those as almost like modules, and then feel how they fit together.
I mean, isn't that how they end like every other Batman story? Last page, him standing at the grave of his parents.
In fact, there was a mistake in drawing. Scott did draw the Wayne's grave there, and he wasn't working on that at that point. But I guess I should. I don't. It's not that I mind it's not the wrong scene. It's the wrong pacing of the scene. It's just, it comes so quickly. There's no breathing room, right? She's like there, her voiceover, my kind of captions or whatever. It just is really just a beat too quick. Just need to kind of breathe. Even by one more page would have probably done it.
I didn't get that. I just took it as like just
again. It's his nitpicks. We know how you are.
Yeah, I am. I'm self-judgmental, but the rest of it, I really, I think she's got like some incredible badass moments in it. She just turns the tables, on the snake route. I think the detail of, like I said, of the ninjutsu stuff and how it gets worked in feels very sort of different and ferocious, and I love the snake route. I mean, I wish people would have, played with them more, because I think they were a whole other level of the hand. And I was really, proud of what we did there. And even as you said, Lilith, playing with the chaste, the chaste in like a different way, and giving them, more, to do and be, and how they, they sort of play themselves out beyond even just stick. Like, what do they represent, and what do they, what do they mean? What do they mean to her? What does she mean to them? That type of thing. So, I was really pleased with all those elements.
And like I said, you kind of teased it, but if we had you done the Elektra ongoing, would you have maybe delved deeper into Stick's origin?
Stick would probably at some point, but I think Stick would have. Stick, you've got to keep mysterious. Like, the more you get into certain things, if it's Elektra's series, Elektra's got to become more relatable, to my mind, in certain ways. Just like Frank Castle, became more relatable in certain ways. But it's a balancing act. How much does somebody become relatable, and then how much do you weaken them? Stick's got to stay, of that character who shows up for 3 pages and is badass. Because if he starts like just hanging out too much and drinking beers and saying, "Oh, I was really worried about that," and not just being Stick, it loses, some of the magic, right? He just becomes then this strange, creepy old man. So I don't know how much I would have gotten back into the origins, but who knows? Sometimes you don't know where the stories are going to take you until you have a chance to play out with them more. But maybe the group itself, there could have been a lot to do with that. And how does that play out? And how does, for all we know, the group existed and he came in and challenged the leadership, or maybe the group was leaderless and he came in mysteriously. Maybe they don't even know who the hell he is. Maybe Stone's name was Pebble and he renamed him to Stone.
I thought he was with you.
Yeah, exactly. But this is, these are the things that are the bane of ongoing big universe comics is the continuity, right? Because it becomes then so complex that it becomes
modern comics could never. They don't understand.
Well, it becomes impenetrable. Like, somebody sent me a note, by email the other day, and it's like, did you know that Scott Lobdell took your Death's Head spore virus from your run on Shield and incorporated it into this, that, and the other thing? And I was like, dude, thanks for letting me know, but I don't even know what you're talking about. And I lost you at like Scott Lobdell. And then, it goes so up here. On the other hand, there are moments you discover as a creator, as a writer, as an artist that are quote unquote leftover bits that nobody did anything with. I mean, certainly I did that with Fall from Grace. I mean, the whole thing of the Kingpin saying, I'm going to hold on to these, these billy clubs or whatever, and I'm going to, with Matt's blood on them, and I'm going to wait for a day to do something with them. Well, nobody did anything with them. So where the hell are they? I'm going to do something with them. Or just Elektra. What does Elektra mean? Right? Why is she named Elektra? Why aren't we doing something with that? Frank named her Elektra for a reason. So I got to play that out, more.
Oh, I love when people take the old stuff like that and like re-explore it, where something's left dangling. Yeah. But I mean, I'm sure you like all your work, but it seems like you have like a special like bond with like Daredevil and Elektra. Like, what is it about the characters that you're just like, man, I could write them for years and years?
I think it's a combination of I had 2 or 3, and I'll count Ron Garney in there, even though he's just on one issue. Although we tried to recruit him, for more. But I had extraordinary creative partners on Daredevil, right? I had people who I was very much in sync with. I hope they think they were, that I was in sync with them, who were formative. I mean, Lee and I didn't know shit, right? Like we were fledgling creators. We were, trying to make a mark. We were trying to use this book and this character to do that. We were learning as we were going. We were on the phone to each other, constantly. And so these characters and these worlds and these incidents, I think, become very ingrained with you. And there's just certain aspects to Daredevil, where I think it has that very unusual friction that we've talked about before of that vigilante and that lawyer, that if you play them out right, are unique. There's a lot of playboys who are millionaires who are this, millionaires who are that. He was very rich at one point, right? He had penthouses and such, but that wasn't the core, I think, of the character, at least ever for me. It was the dichotomy. And I think that's unusual. I think the hypersenses are unusual. Yeah. And those are things that are really unique things to work with. And for me, I will credit Elektra Assassin with really putting the Elektra bug in my head, because that was me coming in as an assistant editor at Epic Comics, and that being the thing, one of the first things I worked on was that book. And Joe Duffy was the editor, and I was the assistant editor, and Joe was like, "Here, do things with these pages," or even if that's just mailing them out or getting Frank on the phone, or suddenly I'm looking at this stuff and I'm reading these scripts, and they're just, they're read like nothing else. The art looks like nothing else. And nobody paid attention to Epic, right? Because we were down the hall and everyone just thought, oh, it's that creator-owned stuff. So you have to realize also that book was like, nobody knew what the hell was coming until it kind of came out. So I think that was certainly something that imprinted Elektra in my mind and in my head. And once you start to play out that world, and her friction, with Matt and that world, there's they invariably kind of go together. But I think that's for me, again, it was just the imprint of the unique aspects of the character and the unique aspects of the people I worked with. If I had terrible working experiences, if the editors were horrible, if the creative partners were horrible, I don't think it would be the same feeling of a character.
Well, that's what I was just thinking as you said it. So you don't have to get specific, but is there like a book you were ever handed, like you were assigned, and you're like, I don't know if I'm really going to enjoy this, but then you get like a great like penciler, and the creative team is just so great, it makes you, you're like, okay, now I'm here for this because who I was handed as a team.
Yeah, I think that happens a lot. I mean, I've been so fortunate with the people that I worked with. I really worked with top tier talent well beyond my abilities, in so many ways. I mean, it's like a who's list, right? I mean, I've worked with Bill Sienkiewicz. I've worked with Dennis Cowan. I worked with Lee Weeks. I worked with Scott McDaniel. But I think you find, immediate, friction, with some people. And there was a book I did with Dark Horse, called Motorhead, which was part of their shared universe, right? And they revamped maybe all the titles at one point. And so they asked me to work on Motorhead and the revamp of that. And I got assigned to that with this guy, Carl Waller, who I became good friends with. But, and Carl and I just synced really quickly on it. And I think the madness and sort of moments of that book, came out of that, much more so than either of us expected, because we had such good synergy. So it wasn't, Phil, as if it was, oh, this is going to be a grind and it got better, but it felt more like, okay, this is an assignment and this is great and it's good to have work. And then it became, boy, this is really crazy, enjoyable. And it went in very different places because of that synergy.
Yeah, I think you've said before, it's just like, you wrote a story and then, you get art back that you weren't expecting. And you're just like, man, this is much better than what I wrote.
Yeah. And sometimes you just know that talking to people on the phone too, right? You start to get a real rhythm and you start to get excited, and you say something, somebody else says something else, and it starts to bounce around, in different ways. And you're suddenly in a much different place, right. The best place you can get to, I think, creatively with things is when you forget who came up with what. You're not precious about, well, that was my idea and Carl drew it. Or Carl asked me to do that scene and I did it, begrudgingly. It's more you're riffing and then suddenly you've got a complete story. It's like, okay, I got to go back to my corner for a little while and make this work for us in terms of page breakdowns or some script or stuff. You sort of have inherently forgotten the certain things that you did and he or she did. It's more about just, wow, we're having a great time with this.
So I think that's probably the number one secret to like a good story, like, say Fall from Grace. It's like, it's not I wrote this or Scott drew this. It's like, hey, the machine churned this out. I don't know who did what, but the machine did that. Us as the machine did this. And
yeah, I think there's a lot of that. I think that's the best moments. I mean, there are certain things that I drove more on those books, in terms of arrogance or impetus or momentum, and some of them were smart things, and some of them were, I don't know if I'd go back and do them differently. There was a lunch meeting where we had to pitch Fall from Grace to Tom DeFalco. And I was cursing Ralph out for it because I was like hoping we could fly under the radar, and we got through about probably 30% of the lunch just having lunch and BSing about stuff. And I was thinking, man, we're going to dodge this whole thing. And then Tom was like, so tell me what you're going to do. And I just tried to describe the story. And Tom was like nodding his head, and he says, well, the whole thing with the subway is way too complicated. Just put the virus in a warehouse and have them, break it out of there. And I remember being really put off by that and sort of feeling, well, we've got this whole elaborate thing with the subways and blah, 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 blah. And I went back to the office and I said to Ralph, well, before we went to lunch, you thought this was a great idea. Let's still do this. We're still going to do it, cause he was like, okay, you're going to take all of Tom's suggestions. And I was like, no, I'm not going to take Tom's suggestions. I'm going to go do this. And that was that arrogance and sort of the momentum and pushing it forward. But in retrospect, I think Tom was probably right. And I should have listened to Tom more. Or found a balance between the two, right? But that was an instance where I drove something forward.
Or maybe it was just a little reverse psychology all along. Him and Ralph
maybe, but that's also just becoming a more mature writer, right? Some of it was based upon, okay, I had all these elements, and then the arrogance is about trying to maintain that drive. But as you write more, or you create more things, you get into that place of, okay, that first draft in your head isn't necessarily the best draft. But sometimes it is. I think the Elektra story was that very organic flow, and I don't think I did many drafts of it, as opposed to, again, the Batman Daredevil, which went through several drafts to get to a rightish place. But this was just, here it is. The story wants to come to life in this way, and it wants to tell her background. It wants to tell the story of these ferocious ninja trying to reclaim their legacy or their force of the killer and that sort of thing. And it just really snapped together nicely and snapped a lot of people's backs in the process, because there's a lot of that.
Well, no, I mean, as someone who's read that story a lot over the years, it's like, I think your idea worked, because I mean, that last fight scene, there was a lot of characters in I think an outdoor scene worked better than that would have had to been a big damn warehouse to contain that big fight.
We could have had the Ark of the Covenant coming out. We could have had like all sorts of things. Hell of a warehouse.
Gunfights, ninjas. Yeah, I mean, everything. You needed open space. And again, at the end, didn't it like start raining? It's like, I think that like really like,
because I think we broke the street above it. We did a whole Ghostbusters street breaks open. No, I mean, I think, his real drive was,
so you're not even remembering it right now. At the end, that last fight scene is not even down in the sewers, because Matt has to call because they had ripped up the old track and he had to find. Like,
I thought you were describing.
No.
I thought you were describing the earlier scene. Okay.
Yeah, no, the final one. Yeah, that junkyard or whatever. Yeah.
But I think it's it's just about simplification. It's about what is the reader going to be able to follow. So if it worked, and I think ultimately it did, because I had a bunch of issues to kind of get up to it, but certainly before I had put one word to paper, right? And this was before we began the whole story. This was the lunch with Tom. This would have been, his initial reaction to me sort of stumbling through, well, this is the story we're going to do. And by the way, we're going to change the costume. And by the way, we're going to do this. And by the way, so who knows? I probably probably didn't have my pitch skills down very well either at that point.
I mean, it's a big story. I mean, you got it oversized. The last part was an oversized issue 325. You were probably like, I got to go big here, don't you?
Oh yeah. In fact, I went to this convention at you guys know this. I went to this convention at Mohegan Sun's casino in Connecticut, and I was reminded that 325 actually has this killer poster.
Yes.
Like stapled into it, right? It's a double-sized issue, and it has this amazing movie-style poster that Scott did of all of Fall from Grace. You've got all the characters, you've got Elektra, you've got Daredevil at the center of it. It's a pretty amazing piece of art.
Oh yeah,
that I don't think most people have ever even seen. It's really killer. I mean,
oh yeah, back in the day, man, I framed that. I had it on the wall. I don't know where it ever went to, but that's ever since we've been talking to you. I'm like, man, I got
your mom sold it on eBay.
Probably,
maybe,
probably.
It's really. I mean, talk about like not getting promotion or attention. It's an amazing poster.
It is. Yeah, but since we've been talking to you, I'm like, man, I got to track that down on eBay or something, and stick it back up on the wall.
$600.
I know. Probably now it's probably like, yeah.
It better be signed. Is all that I can say.
It's graded.
Hey man,
I
will pay for postage. I'll be like, hey, can you sign this? I'll send it to Scott. Hey, can you sign this?
I don't know if you're going to be offended by this or not, but like I'm a huge Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles fan, right? And like so Last Ronin is out, and I'm just like, he would be such a good fit for modern Teenage Ninja Turtles after reading this one. Rereading it again, and I was just like, yeah.
It's a lot of ninja knowledge still in my head, so it's
and she's actually like, because there's been a couple of female turtles. I'm like, Elektra would actually be like the blueprint for the most ideal female Ninja Turtles. Like, I'm just going to throw that into the atmosphere.
Did they ever do, I never was a big reader of Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. Did they ever do a sort of an Elektra?
Well, they did it in the TV show, and they made Venus. And then there's another female turtle also in live action. Well, not live action, but animation and stuff. Okay. But like, if they go the book route, like, yeah, I think she would be the perfect blueprint and a good homage. It seems like
with all the other nods to Daredevil and
exactly, it's like, come on, it's right there.
Exactly, kind of stick, splinter. I mean, it's all there. Just go in and have some fun with it without running afoul of.
Yeah, Last Ronin's kind of been diving into like that that whole origin stuff. I'm like, this would vibe so well.
Yeah, absolutely, cool stuff.
Got my Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle quip in too, Philip.
Nicely done.
I was going to say, yeah, if you ever want to pitch a Ninja Turtles book and you need background, yeah, she's your
Lilith is the one
for your source. Go for it. Yeah,
very cool.
Yeah, great job all around. I really enjoyed rereading this miniseries. It'd been a minute, but I was just like, oh my god, why didn't they do this for the movie? Or why didn't they execute this better for the movie?
Why didn't they do anything for the movie? I think somebody should do a mashup edit of Elektra and Wonder Woman 84. Oh. And and maybe the two of them together would make
instead of waterboarding. Yeah.
And I love the first Wonder Woman. I really do.
Oh, yeah.
But 84 was just like,
we're in agreement. Yes, we're
all in agreement. Most people forget Elektra even had a movie for that.
Yeah.
You know what? I've attempted to watch that Elektra movie so many times. I fall asleep. I never fall asleep.
No, I literally fell asleep on a date in a movie theater watching that movie.
Yeah. I never fall asleep during movies, and I fall asleep every time I put that on. I don't know what it is.
I mean, what they should really do for an Elektra movie is they should do an animated version
of
Elektra Assassin. Well, no,
animated, yeah.
I think
for the violence, because that never gets.
Well, but just think,
the trippy visuals too.
One of the best, and there were 1,000 best moments, but one of the best moments in Into the Spider-Verse is when Sienkiewicz's Kingpin shows up. I mean, it's insane. It's like, wait a minute. It's like, that's insane. That's, crazy. Imagine like an entire film done in that style. That would be, completely, again, mainlining God knows what.
No, you know what you do.
Sony, dear Sony.
Well, it'd have to be Marvel, wouldn't it?
Yeah, would
because Disney owns the rights to Daredevil again. It would have to be Disney.
Oh, dang it, you're right.
Yeah. Elektra's pure Daredevil. There's no complication of rights there. So.
No, that's what you got to do. You got to do an animated Fall from Grace and then spin Elektra Root of Evil out of that. Get 2 movie deal.
Come on, Disney Plus, you're flush with cash. We see you.
Exactly.
Come on, let's get Chichester paid.
There's move on from the what if stories, which are hysterically all ending exactly like the comics used to end, like either the universe is exploding or it goes right back to where it was before. So they've got the what if story down to a pat. Time to move on.
And at least 3 of the 6 they've shown so far, Tony Stark dies. So
I know, but that's
again. This is the timeline Strange wants. He wants to be the guy. He can't be the guy when Tony's the guy. I'm just saying. He's mentoring freaking Peter now in the MCU. Come on, think about it. Oh. Strange indeed.
All right. So we have any other thoughts for this man, Will?
Definitely not. I think that you guys should definitely go pick it up.
Oh yeah,
or read it on Marvel Unlimited. I don't know how you guys get paid on that. I always assume everything's on the Kindle model. Read it all.
Exactly. Go find it.
But yes, it is,
and it's in one of the Marvel Epic collections. I think that they did recently or within the last year and a half. There's a Root of Evil collected edition, which collects a lot of different Daredevil stories, but they glommed the whole miniseries into there as well.
But yeah, it's been collected. It's on Marvel Unlimited, so it's easier to find now than when it originally came out, kids. So
poor Phil probably had to scour every dang news rack and newspaper stand.
No, back a couple weeks ago, remember I told you my comic shop was having that sidewalk sale when they were just like they just like had long boxes and long boxes. They gave you a bag for like $10 and said, "Here, you can have as many comics as."
That's a great
deal. Modern local comic book shops could never. Actually, they do the $25 grab bag, but $25 is $10. Just about $10 90s money.
Hey, I made the Chichester run. I found at least the first issue of this. I got some Terror issues. I think I got maybe 2 or 3 issues of Nick Fury. Yeah.
I might need to extend my collection going to one of those.
I mean, it was great. It was like $10 here. Fill up a bag, and it's. I mean, it was a stack like that big. I'm like, modern comics. That would be 2 comics. So it's like
exactly. So
All right. So once again, thank you, sir.
Thank you guys. Always. This is a real privilege, and I appreciate you guys' interest in the time you take.
And the homework for next time, I figured since it was October, maybe we should dive into some Terror. So Terror Inc., I think it's the first 5 issues of the first arc. So
you want to go with that one? Okay, good. Yeah. All right.
For October, yeah.
I think that's perfect for October. All right, we'll figure out the dates, and we'll delve into body parts, and he showed up in a few issues of Daredevil too, so we can always play that out.
Eventually, we're gonna have to get through Dead Man's Hand. Yeah,
good stuff. All right, folks. Nice seeing you both.
Oh, hey, do you have anything you want to promote?
You're right. I should be promoting things. Right. Please go check out my newsletter, which is at storymaze.substack.com. We just cracked 150, subscribers. So nice. Add yourself to the mix and get a free copy of the plot to Daredevil 380, which is a bonus for subscribers. And there might even be some other special bonuses coming up in the near future for subscribers and readers. So check that out, please.
Ooh, nice. Yeah, you'll get pictures from his vacation.
Yeah, that's really exciting.
All right. But yes, thank you again, sir. It's always a pleasure.
Always a pleasure.
Yes.
All right, guys. I'll see you later. Take care.
Thank you, sir.